Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast at the end of the international break. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever I'm joined by Brian Dick to discuss the last couple of weeks, look ahead to the Shrewsbury game on Saturday, a long-awaited return to football club football, and just generally just natter a little bit. I think, Brian, how are you doing? How's your international break been?
Long, yeah. I'm okay, thanks. I'm not sorry to see the return of football. It's been really quite dull. I'm not a massive follower of England's prospects, really. International football doesn't really float my boat. So, yeah, it's just been a little bit of a grind, certainly from finding a content point of view on a professional basis, and just, you know, on a personal basis, you just kind of want to dot the I's and cross the T's now, don't you, on this season, and put it all to bed and you know, start picking up a bit of silverware.
Yeah, I got really into the first England game under Thomas Tuchel and watched it all. And then the second one, I watched about 20 minutes and it just felt like one of those kind of typical internationals. And I struggled to invest in them, like you say, right outside of major tournaments. So
yeah, the qualifiers particularly, exactly. Yeah, the major tournaments are very different, aren't they? But the qualifiers, it just feels like, you know, a little bit like Birmingham City's running, where you're just sort of trying to take care of business and then move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah. So on the Blues front, international wise, obviously we had Peck go away with South Korea. Jay Stansfield were joined up with England and 21s. Willem Willemson with Iceland. Luke Harris, Wales 21s. And is there anyone I've missed? There's one more, isn't there? Grant Hanley with Scotland. So Hanley played for Scotland, as he does. To be fair, he's played more for Scotland this season than he has club football. But there were two injuries to report with Peck going down half an hour or so into South Korea's first game and not being able to play any part in their second game. I believe it's a hamstring injury. You know, there's been stuff from South Korea saying it's not particularly serious, but obviously we'll get an update from Chris Davies on that pre-Shrewsbury. The press conference, I must say, is going to be happening later today. We're recording Friday morning, press conference Friday afternoon. So just for context, so Jay Stansfield, a similar one really, joined up with 21s and then was obviously released to go home back to Blues straight away with an unspecified injury. So yeah, that's kind of, you know, that's what you don't want to happen in international break, isn't it? You have players go away, particularly in Peck's case, play a game and get an injury, particularly this time of the season as well with the Wembley game coming.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not much recovery time, is there now, before 4 weeks, and it's effectively season ending, is it? Just because of where we are in the season. So, yeah, the J one, I don't know, but it read like it was just sort of an accumulation of knocks over a long, hard season rather than anything particularly acute. The Peck one, the hamstring, is a concern, and we'll come on to this a little bit later, I think. You know, do you just wrap Peck up in cotton wool until April the 13th? And wheel him out at Wembley, or you know, how conservative and how cautious are you with Peck, which will obviously be dictated by the injury. Thankfully, Mark Leonard's back on the scene, isn't he? After his injury, and Iwata is indestructible, as we know. So, and poor Grant Hanley. You know, I think the only thing that will have hurt, that he will have bruised, will have been his ego a little bit, because Scotland got a bit of a chasing from Greece, didn't they, in that second leg at Hampden after a really good performance away in Piraeus. But yeah, we wouldn't expect Hanley to be in the starting lineup anyway, would we, on Saturday? No,
definitely not. So moving on a little bit, talking about the international break. I mean, like you said earlier, Brian, we've been trying to keep ourselves busy. Blues did have the Trevor Francis Memorial concert this week on Thursday night, actually. So it was a late one. I went to it. It was a really decent evening, to be fair, put on by Jasper Carrott. The guests they kept under wraps, didn't they? They've done very well to keep them a secret until the actual show. And there was some decent names there. They had Tony Hadley from Spandau Ballet. They had Ian Irving, who was actually, not known to me beforehand, but he's a very interesting comedian, a really good comedian. I'm sure there'll be Blues fans in the audience who'll probably want to go and watch him at some of his gigs in the near future. Remind me who else, Brian? You've just read my piece on it. Who else was there?
I did read your piece, definitely, and I paid
And you've
real close attention.
You've also forgotten who was there.
Was Toya there? Toya was on, was she?
Yeah, Toya Wilcox. That was a real change, actually, because she came on right after Graham Souness had been on, which, again, Graham Souness is a really big name. Played with Trevor at Sampdoria and was quite close to him because they were obviously the only two Brits in that team and shared an apartment block. So he gave some really good insight into what Trevor was like and kind of the lifestyle that he led. And there is quite a poignant conversation between him and Jasper Carrott. And then, it was strange that he went straight to Toya, and it was kind of, rush. He was basically rocking a stage 15 minutes. Really, really loud, completely different to the somber conversation we just seen. But it was like that all night. It was kind of when you've got a variety of different acts, you're jumping from one to the next, aren't you? So all in all, to be fair, I quite enjoyed it, and fair play to Jasper Carrott and also to the people who turned up for raising money all in aid of the Birmingham City Foundation, obviously Trevor's memory.
Yeah, I met Trevor several times during my role at the paper and the website. Always found him to be a really interesting guy. Very happy to sit and talk about his career, and because he was he lived in and around Birmingham. He was around the city so often. You kind of take him for granted, or took him for granted a little bit. He was actually, he was a big piece of footballing history, really. That £1 million first £1 million player title is not easily brushed over. He really is, as I say, a member of the footballing aristocracy. And when people sit down and write about the history of English football, Trevor Francis will have a footnote in there, not just for the price tag, but for the two European Cups, for his management career, playing and management career at Birmingham City. He really is a footballing aristocrat, and I always enjoyed talking to him. Always found him interesting, both in an insight into stuff that he was playing when I was growing up, and just sort of very honest about what happened to him at Birmingham. And if there's one thing you always came away with talking about to Trevor about Blues, was he just bled blue. He's not from Birmingham. He comes from Plymouth, but the club just got under his skin. Still sadly missed, and a real part of football's story for me.
Yeah, Graham Souness made the point that maybe his managerial career didn't quite get the credit it deserved because he was so kind of unlucky with Blues in particular, wasn't he, in terms of losing finals. But his managerial career, if you look at it in kind of context of Blues in the last 20, 25 years, probably stacks up to one of the better managers they've had over that period. Just that glass ceiling, couldn't break through that glass ceiling of getting it back into the Premier League. But heaven knows he came close, and he poured his heart and soul into it. Yeah. Brian, moving on to the running. Now, this is genuinely crazy because the two rearranged games against Blackpool and Stevenage, Blues have 11 games in 36 days to play before May 3rd against Cambridge on the final day. It's pretty hectic. There is 1 week where Blues will play Monday, Thursday, and Sunday. I think after the cup final, they play 6 games. It's crazy. You put a little thing down for us to pour over. Biggest banana skin. Who are you going for?
Yeah, I'm actually quite worried about the cup final itself. I think
that.
Do you know what? Peterborough are a live opponent. They've improved lately, and they score goals. And they were well in the game at St Andrews. Yes, I know they had a gift from Peacock Farrell, didn't they? In that game, and it was a 3-2 win, which was probably slightly flattered Peterborough because Blues were very good in the way that they came back. But on a big pitch against an attacking team who can score goals, Yeah, it is. It's a banana skin for me. I think it's a really difficult game. I really am not taking that one for granted at all. I think part of that is because, yeah, the other league matches, the other 10 league matches, yes, if Blues slip up, they'll get another opportunity. But this is a game with jeopardy, and it's a final, and it only takes a referee's decision or a bit of magic from a Peterborough attacker or a set piece or something like that, and the whole double thing's gone. So I am quite fearful. Not fearful, it's the wrong word. I'm conscious of the fact that it is going to be a very live fixture, that final.
Yeah, they're in a false position, aren't they, really? With the players they've got, I think we all expected them to be maybe not automatic, but certainly challenging for the playoffs at the start of the season. And they've had injuries to key players. Poku was excellent for them at the start of the season, then had a fairly long injury. And he's only recently coming back. So some of their players haven't quite lived up to it. They lost one player to Bolton, didn't they, mid-season? Joe Randall, who was quite influential for them last season. So clearly been changes there. But yeah, like you say, Brian, I wouldn't really underestimate them. I think they're a decent side with some very good attacking players and some pacey players as well.
Yeah.
When you think of Mothersill, obviously Poku I mentioned, they've got players there who can really hurt Blues. And that is kind of, that is the game, like you say, with jeopardy going into these final 11, isn't the rest of them? Although they have a lot riding on them in terms of Blues need a certain amount of wins to get promoted, you have to feel that they're probably only going to need maybe 4 or 5 more wins, maybe 4 more wins to probably guarantee the league title. So 4 in 10. I mean, that's doable, isn't it? Quite easily. So you have to think they're going to do that. In terms of one game in isolation, I'd probably pick Stevenage away as the real banana skin. I look at the league fixtures, just because Blues have had 2 games against them, both really even contests in this year. And, particularly the away game in the Cup, where both teams were slightly weakened. But Stevenage gave Blues a couple of scares that night, and it was a very, very close game. So they're a decent side and one that could probably cause an upset. But I dare say there'll be a few in the final, I think 6 away games Blues have that fancy themselves.
Yeah, one of them's at Wembley, isn't it? So it's 5 at home, 5 away, and 1 at Wembley. Okay. That Stevenage game it's in the teeth of the fixture congestion, isn't it? Because Blues play, I think, Burton on Easter Monday. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then they play Mansfield on the Sunday, and sandwiched in between that game on the Thursday is a trip to Stevenage. So yeah, and as you say, there's not been a huge amount between the teams so far this season. Albeit you look at Blues 11 and compare it to Stevenage's and think, that should be relatively straightforward. But I think you're right. I think that potentially could be a difficult game, hoping maybe that Blues could have it wrapped up by then, and it's devoid of too much tension from that point of view. What about the key players? Do you think who are you happy that's back fit or coming back fit, or who do you think is sort of like going to be the player that you can hang your hat on in the run in when the games are going to get tight?
I'm happy that Laird is coming back to fitness. Obviously from a hamstring around a month out now, so you'd presume he's going to be ready. Chris Davis hopefully after the international break. So I think he's been so influential since turn of the year and this season as well. He obviously wasn't showing the quality in terms of his output earlier in the season, but he was still making the same runs and having that effect and getting into the positions. He's had a really good season. There are injuries when you look at the kind of at the moment the landscape of it. There's 6, 7 players that have potentially been carrying knocks, and you've got 3 obviously out long term in Dykes, Buchanan, and Wright. So the squad has really been stretched, and players like Willemsen's been out of form. Anderson's only just come back from an injury. He's been really important. I wouldn't be surprised to see Chris Davies rotate before Wembley. I think particularly the Peterborough game in the league in the week leading up to it. I feel like both managers are probably going to rotate in that one, aren't they?
Keep their powders dry a little bit, you mean, and
Yeah,
put a bit of cotton wool on the key players for the final potentially.
Yeah, you can't have a complete dress rehearsal, can you? Where both teams play their first 11 and just go at it.
No, and show their entire hand of cards. No, absolutely not. There'll
Yeah.
be more kidology in it than that. You're right. The player I'm pleased that is back, and I think we saw that at Northampton, is Keshi Anderson.
Yeah.
You know, he is for me Blues' most reliable attacker now. You know, we've talked about his progression from free agent and trialist to Blues key player, you know, in a squad that's worth millions. But yeah, as regards a return of goals and assists and just generally fitting into the pattern and giving structure to the team and balance to the team, he's the one that, you know, if there's a cross to be made or a pass to be made or even a chance to finish, you know, and I can't believe I'm saying this because the knock on him last season was that he didn't take enough chances, wasn't it? But if the ball falls to him now, I'm thinking, yeah, he's got the technique and the presence of mind. I think is a big thing as well to, you know, to do the necessary. So I'm really relieved to see Keshi back in, hopefully back in sync and back up running again. Yeah,
player to shine in the running, Brian.
I think, I mean, Keshi obviously would be the one. You'd like Jay to sort of plunder a few more goals, wouldn't you? And you know, add 5 or 6 or 7. You've mentioned Lair, Cochrane again had a great season. Let's get Tomoki Iwata up to 10, shall we? Up to 10 goals. I think if you can do that, and if Peck is out for a period of time, then Iwata becomes a real critical member of the team. You know, just not only in terms of his obvious goal threat, although he hasn't scored for a while, has he? I can't remember the last time he scored. I shouldn't have.
They all came in a flurry, didn't they, at the start of the season?
Yeah. So if he can get back in those positions where his clean hitting or clean striking of the ball gets the opportunity to show itself, then Iwata for me is the man to steer Blues over the line, I think.
I don't want to hang my hat on Mark Leonard, but if he does get a chance, while Peck is out injured, if it's 3-4 games, I do think he's got the quality to really impress. We've seen all the other players kind of do it now, haven't we? They've all had, a lot of them have had good seasons. You know, we put a poll together for player of the season, didn't we, during this international break, and there were 9 candidates. So, it shows the starting. You've got 9 of your starting 11 right there, haven't you? So, Mark Leonard has been probably the most unlucky player at Blues this season. And I think he's had quite a good season still. You know, when he's been called upon, he has done pretty well. And I have no qualms about carrying him to the championship either. So, if Mark Leonard can get a little run of games, 4 or 5 games, maybe, Peck is out for a little while, maybe he can have a really strong finish to the season. And then what's probably been quite a frustrating season for him. You know, let's not forget as well, Mark Leonard will have played probably all of the Virtue Trophy games and started them, maybe bar the Bradford game, obviously, because he was injured. So he probably, has more of a claim than most to be in that 11 at Wembley.
Yeah, indeed. How far was Gardner Hickman away? What were the noises coming out before I know you'll find out later today, so it's a bit of a redundant question me asking you this, but just in terms of shaping this discussion, not very long, is it?
No, the impression I got on Laird and Gardner Hickman was that they would be pretty soon after the international break. I feel like Laird was probably slightly ahead of Gardner Hickman. That was the impression I got, but I don't think we'll be waiting for that long for either of them.
Like you, I'd love to see Leonard, get 7 or 8 starts in the run in here. Just wonder if Davis prefers Gardner Hickman or feels a bit more comfortable with Gardner Hickman. His physicality and his versatility to line up again alongside Iwata. But yeah, we'll see, and you'll probably know the answer to that in a couple of hours. So
yeah, I think you ask Iwata to do a slightly different job when Leonard plays, don't you?
You do, definitely. Yeah,
I think you ask him to kind of move away from that central ground a little bit because Leonard's the perfect pivot, isn't he? So they've played well together in the past. I remember that Shrewsbury away game, the 4-0, and they played together in that game because Peck had gone away on internationals, and both of them were really good. Iwata especially playing slightly further forward, and I think he did get a goal that night. So it can work, and it has worked in the past.
Speaking of that game, and it's not on the running order, Blues were fined, weren't they, for a little bit of a scrap in that game, and they've been done again for the melee at the end of the game against Bolton. At Wrexham, they've also been done. I think they're 20k out of pocket now, aren't they? In terms of FA fines. Is that? How do you feel about that? I'm tempted to say good.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Like, because I don't want to sit here and condone football players going and like fighting each other, to be honest. But it shows team spirit, doesn't it? And Blues, especially last season, were criticised for not having enough of that, or the minerals late in games when they were conceding left, right, and centre to drop points. This season, they do have a steeliness and a grit about them, don't they? And they want to protect their teammates, which is quite nice. We've seen that in all these incidents. I think it was Luke Harris against Bolton who started it, wasn't it? And a fair few have rushed over, and it was Scott Wright Scott Wright in the Shrewsbury game. I think it was
Bielik in the or Bielik's tackle, wasn't it, in the Wrexham game?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't really have an issue with it, and I feel like they're obviously going to keep doing it at this stage. In one of the written reasons the FA gave, I think it was after that Shrewsbury incident, they said they'd increased the fine because Birmingham City had shown no intent to stop doing it. So, it's they hadn't learned their lessons, basically. I don't think they will. Let's face it, 20 grand's pocket change to a football club over the course of a season, isn't it? So.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's not a coincidence, is it? It's clearly you back each other up kind of thing. Blues haven't kept their nose clean. They're not strangers to these situations over the course of the last few seasons. Yeah. But three in a season, and the FA citing the fact that so many players have got involved as an issue. That's clearly a thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which leads us on to what does it lead us on to? It leads us on to Shrewsbury, doesn't it? The game this weekend. Gareth Ainsworth is now no longer Shrewsbury's manager. He's gone to Gillingham, who are, I think, 19th in League Two, which on the face of it seems an odd move. And Michael Appleton's come in, and think until the end of the season, Appleton's a man that's spent plenty of time in League One, most recently with Charlton and Lincoln. With Blues, Shrewsbury have already hit Blues with the new manager bounce once, haven't they?
Well, yeah, and with the third different manager Blues have faced in 3 games against Shrewsbury this season, so the game plan or whatever Chris Davies had dreamt up in the international break probably goes out the window a little bit, doesn't it? Because it's going to be a completely different manager. I don't know that you can have that many different ideas, in fairness. What can Michael Appleton do in 3 days on the training ground, 2 or 3 days? He can probably come up with one plan, and that's to have a low block and try and hit Blues on the counter, isn't it? I don't think you can do much more than that with the players he has at his disposal there. So, it's a really strange one, because with Ainsworth being appointed before that first Blues game, I took a little interest in his first interview and things like that, and obviously he was giving it the it's a long-term project. Wants to find a club like Wycombe where he did well, and then to leave after four months is pretty poor form on the face of it. Obviously we don't know what's gone on there, whether promises have been broken and what have you. So it's clear Gillingham have got a bit of money spent by the managers they've appointed over the last 2 years. So maybe he thinks, with both of them likely to be in the same league next year, that Gillingham have a better chance of getting straight back into League One and going beyond that. So, it'd be interesting to see what, whether Shrewsbury are just deflated at this point because they're bottom of the league, have just lost another manager, and probably, they don't really have much of a fight left, do they, Brian? To be fair, they're quite cut adrift at the bottom now.
Oh, you've said that now, haven't you? That's poked the bear, albeit maybe quite a small bear. Just they had plenty of fight in them when the sides met in November, didn't they? Obviously, Shrewsbury won 3-2, which I think was Blues' second League One defeat after the Charlton game, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that prompted, that real long unbeaten run, which has only fairly recently ended by Bolton. the features of that game. What were the features of that game in November, Alex, or the issues of that game, and will they be an issue again on Saturday?
Well, it was the physicality of John Marquis, wasn't it? That caused them so many issues, and Clara and Bielik had real off days, real off days. I've not seen Clara have another game like that, to be fair. And I remember Bielik after that game saying that he was almost embarrassed by his performance in that match. So he's probably not going to be in the team this time around. But Bloxham, the right winger, was really, really dangerous, but he left in January. He was actually a good player and left in January. So you look at them now without a manager, and they don't really have that many standout threats. Even John Marquis, you wouldn't expect him, a journeyman League One striker, to cause Blues defenders so many issues.
Well, John Marquis is back in the side, isn't he? Having served his 3-game suspension, so potentially that'll be an issue for Blues again. Or Clara will presumably want to have his say or his response to what happened back in November. What are you thinking team-wise, Alex?
Blues haven't got a lot of options, as I mentioned earlier. I don't think really. With Peck potentially out, you bring in Leonard into midfield because Gardner-Hickman surely won't be, ready to start a game even if he is fit. So that's your midfield. As ever, 4 of your back 5 picks itself. The only one is the right back, and even though Laird might well be coming back to fitness or might be fit, I'd still go with Samson. I think I don't want to be taking any unnecessary chances with Laird, particularly in a game like this where it's probably going to be on paper one of the more simple fixtures, that Blues have got coming up. You don't want to flog Laird before Wembley if you want to play him at Wembley, do you? And Blues have got 4 games before Wembley in the league. So I'd probably rather Laird play at Bristol Rovers if he is fit. I'd rather him play against Barnsley than against Shrewsbury, to be honest. And then it's a question of the 4 up front, isn't it? And for me, I'd take Willemsen out at this point, partly because of his international exertion with Iceland, and partly because of his poor form and that missed chance against Northampton. I'd have Keshi Anderson on the right, obviously, because naturally he's got the ability to come inside and combine and allow Samsted to go on the overlap. I'd have Kieran Dowell, who, has been the main Blues creative threat of late, in the middle in the 10 position, and I'd have Emil Hansen back on the left because I thought he did okay as a sub against Northampton. He's generally done okay since he's been back from injury. Probably more effective than he was before the injuries, to be honest.
I'd say that. Yeah.
Stansfield's fit. He starts up front. If not, Alfie May comes in, doesn't he? Yeah,
indeed. So that's effectively potentially only one of the players that started in November in attack. That was Willemsen, Harris and Anderson with Stansfield up front. Potentially, it might only be Anderson that starts if Stansfield is out. So, I think a wing combination of Hansen and an improved Hansen, I would say, of Hansen and Anderson gives Blues real balance, doesn't it? And you could see them combining really well with Kieran Dowell. And if it is May up front, hopefully he'll get some chances and break this goal drought that he's had, and things really will be looking forward there. Alex, before we go, there's just one thing I want to talk about. Is you and I have both been beavering away on a Wembley supplement, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's a 40-page special for Birmingham Mail / Birmingham Live, which will be out, I think, in shops on April 2nd. It's obviously available online as well. So just give us a flavour of what's been going on or going into that, who you've spoken to, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah, so we've been working on this for probably about a month now, haven't we? And took in interviews away. They're all mainly obviously feature interviews with key players. Done a really nice one with Chris Davies at the start of the international break, which is really good to kind of get that personal insight into him. Obviously speak to him every week, talking to him about injuries and players and what have you, but you don't really kind of get to have that kind of sit back and kind of learn more about him as a coach and a person. So that was really good. Had Jay Stansfield, who was really, really good and really generous with his time. Ryan Alsop, who I think is always a really, really good interviewer. He's always got something to say. And obviously you couldn't have Blues go to Wembley after the trials and tribulations of the last 10 years and not interview the longest serving player, Lukas Djukovic. So he's in there as well. So, they're the 4 interviews that from the current squad that we've got. And I'm hoping people will enjoy reading them. Yeah,
I've gone back a little bit further in time. Paul Tate was the obvious one for me, because obviously he was the scorer of the golden goal in 1995. So he was a really good interview. We'll be releasing that as a podcast, actually.
It's a very good listen. I have listened.
Yeah, we'll be releasing that as a podcast later, and obviously as a written piece in the supplement as well. And as you can imagine, Paul Tate is not short of a story or two. So listen out for that and catch that one in the supplement. And also, I spoke to Lou Macari, who was the manager when Blues first won what was then the Leyland DAF in 1991, and his memory of the occasion, 34 years on, was pretty good, to be fair. He certainly spoke a lot about his time at Blues, short time at Blues, just a few months. He came in January and won the Leyland DAF and then was gone. And he lengthily goes into the reasons why he ended up leaving Blues just a few months later in the May, sort of June time. So, we've enjoyed putting that together. There's pen picks of the current squad. There's the sort of Knighthead story so far. So, as I say, look out for that on April the 2nd in shops. And you will obviously be plugging the online shop as well when the link is up and running for that. So, brilliant. I think that about covers it, doesn't it, Alex?
Yeah, I'm just listening to you there, Brian. You forget the history Blues have got with this competition, don't you, really, as well? And they've won it twice before. Not many teams have won it twice. I think Bristol City might be the kind of most wins them. I think Blues can level them. So if they win this time around, so that would be that's something to strive for as well. But all
indeed.
Good.
Yeah, indeed. Right. Well, thank you, Alex, for your time. I'll let you get off to speak to Chris Davis. We'll find out more about the pressing injury situation. And thank you, everybody, for listening. From both of us here, it's a big keep right on.